It's that time of week again. Time to bring you all an anime review on Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works episode 22. And so I have my coffee with me today as I talk about this episode of Fate Stay Night. And to be real with all of you as I set my coffee down, this episode is probably the slowest episode we have gotten, I think, out of this season of Fate Stay Night, and probably out of the entirety of, Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works. I think probably the slowest of the season. It might be one of the slowest of the entirety of Unlimited Blade Works from Ufotable. But for the most part, some I know are probably going to say this. There's probably going to be varied thoughts about this episode. For one thing, majority are either A, going to say this. They're going to say that this episode was very, very slow, very, very pointless, very, very boring. That's how I think one side is going to look at this episode when it comes to episode 22 of Fate Stay Night. And then there's going to be another side that are going to enjoy this side because there's some Rin moments. If you're a Rin fan, you're really going to love this episode. Straight up. If you are a Rin fan and you love the pairing of Rin x Emiya, you're going to love it. You're straight up going to love this episode, regardless of the content. But I felt like this episode, from my standpoint, regardless of both sides, this episode was the slow, gradual build-up and setup for the upcoming finale of Unlimited Blade Works. As we know, Unlimited Blade Works is coming to an end very soon. I think we only have 2-3 episodes left? I mean, we have some around there, 2 or 3 episodes left, and so that's not much. See, this is episode 22. Usually an anime season only has 24 to 25 episodes, so yeah, I mean, 3 to 2 episodes at maximum? That's not long at all, so it's hard to believe that it's already been that long. This series is about to finally come to an end, and now there's been a lot of mixed reactions to this series, of course, from both sides of, the anime fandom to visual novel players to different sides. There's different sides and perspectives to this series. Some call it slow, some call it a horrible adaptation, some call it amazing. I mean, there's just so many different perspectives to it. And once again, as always with Fate Stay Night, it's going to bring a very controversial discussion or viewpoint on an episode, and that's what this episode's going to do. As I already covered, you're going to have different viewpoints on this episode, either really fucking slow, or Rin is going to be really awesome, you're going to love Rin, or you're just going to be that middle half where you just enjoy the gradual setup of the episode. So let's get into some of these details. I kind of like the slowness in certain reasons. The slowness of this episode I felt really fit with the dramatic build-up we've got in the past couple episodes. The past 3 to 4 episodes we've had of Fate Stay Night have been about Archer and Shiro, and it's about them kind of clashing ideals and, seeing how Shiro and Archer are completely different people. And that's kind of what the past couple episodes have been about, and it's been a lot of, dialogue-heavy stuff. And yes, this episode is also dialogue-heavy, but it was more of a breather episode. That's what I felt like this episode was. It was like to take a moment just to sit down and breathe, because majority of the content we've been getting for the past couple episodes have been incredibly deep in some aspects, when it comes to the conversations, to the dialogue, reading in between the lines, to all the different content we have gotten through the Holy Grail, to the curses that comes out of the Grail, different things like that. And so this episode, for the most part, like I said, it felt like it was just trying to build up the finale. Let me actually drink some of my coffee, before I continue on. Okay, sorry. I'm a coffee addict. Anyways, in this episode, we come to find out that we get the battle strategy for how our heroes are going to be going up against Gil in the final battle. See, as we know, Gilgamesh is very proud, and he constantly called Archer and Shiro, when he met them, fakes. He called them fakes. And as I already said a couple episodes back in the description, when Gil called them fakers and stuff, I kind of said the reason why I think Gil called Archer a faker at the time in the basement was because Archer had a treasury of fakes, and Gil has a treasury of everything, the real things. And so I felt like that's why Gil called Archer a faker, and why he called Shiro a faker, because, they were able to take weapons that they see, duplicate them, and replicate them using, the projection magic, how Archer was doing in his reality marble. And so, that is why I think Gil called them fakers. I don't think I've actually talked about that in my anime reviews. I've talked about it in the comments, but not in my anime reviews. So, the thing is, we kind of find out that Rin and Shiro made a pact. Like, they kind of linked their bodies in a sense. Like, they linked their mana supply. As we know, since the very beginning of Unlimited Blade Works, it's always been talked about how Shiro is not really that good of a master, because he doesn't have the mana supply. He's like a mock master that's kind of a piece of shit. Like, when it comes to mana supply, we know how he gets in the future with Archer, but I'm not talking about that. But in the course of how the series has been throughout, you know, this route, Shiro has always been the person that doesn't have that big of a mana pool. He doesn't. And he can't really supply his servant Saber with enough mana to fight back. This has been very obvious since the first part of Unlimited Blade Works. And so with this episode, Rin confronts Shiro and tries to fix this issue that Shiro's had since the beginning. See, Shiro has this type of ability, as we know through Archer. He can use projection and, you know, copy certain individual weapons. And from what we find out is the key to winning against Gilgamesh is by using the reality marble of Archer to fight Gilgamesh. Because as we know, or as was stated in this episode, and if you know Gil for a very long time since Fate Zero or even this series, depending on wherever you start, you know Gil has a fucking vast supply of noble phantasms. Like, his supply of armory and his war efficiency is crazy. He shoots from any damn direction, and look what he did to Berserker. He wrecked him. And so, you gotta think about this. I mean, as Shiro stated in this episode, he is war itself. Like, straight up, Gilgamesh is war itself. And to fight this dude, you need to have war itself. Like, you need to have the battle capacity of war. And all the other servants we have seen, I think only Castor would be the only one I think could supply that amount of attacks at once. But I don't even think then Castor could probably put up a fight against Gilgamesh. But we'll save that for another discussion later. Thing is, the only person that we know of at the moment that could supply that amount of attacks like Gilgamesh is Archer and Shiro. Those were the only two people, because from what we come to find out with the Reality Marble, with Unlimited Blade Works, they can project their type of weapons and swords, and so whatever Gilgamesh uses, they can actually use projection and use that against him, so it's like their armory grows as they continue to fight Gil, vice versa. And so, that is why Shiro and Archer are kind of like the natural enemy of Gilgamesh, because Gilgamesh hates that type of shit. People just jacking his, you know, weapons, his armory, and different things like that, and using it against him. He doesn't like that shit. And so that's what this episode really tried to imply. The only person that could really stand up to Gilgamesh at this very moment and fight him on slightly even grounds is Shiro, because of his war capacity. That's it. See, Saber may be fucking strong, and if you know how Saber fights, she's strong. Very, 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 very strong. But when it comes to fighting against something like Gilgamesh that has so many different anti-hero weapons, it's going to be hard to fight someone like that. And you also gotta put this in perspective too. As we know what happened to Hercules or Berserker a couple episodes back with Ilya, he was chained. He was chained up because, you know, he was like a half-god, and it stopped him from being able to break the chains. And if you think about this, Shiro is actually one of the perfect people to fight Gilgamesh because he's not a hero. He's not bound by the laws of hero like how, you know, some heroes can get killed by the anti-hero weapons Gilgamesh has. And also, Shiro isn't a god. He is straight up not a god. So any anti-god weapons won't be good against him either. So Shiro's in a good position to actually be able to go up against Gilgamesh because at the moment, he doesn't really have a legend. I mean, Archer does, but he's not really Archer, because they're two different people. And so, Shiro doesn't have a legend, he doesn't have, like, any god status, and he isn't a hero. Like, he isn't a hero in essence, you know, like a heroic spirit. So, Shiro is in a good position to be able to go up against Gilgamesh's treasury, because Gilgamesh has a majority of weapons just to go up against heroes and gods. So now that I've briefly explained that, let's talk about what Rin did to Shiro. So I heard a lot of talk last week. A lot of talk. Like, straight up, a lot of talk, a lot of comments, talking about dolphins. Okay, so I'm going to assume dolphins have to mean towards that CGI segment when Shiro went unconscious. He was in, like, this ocean, and he was, like, unconscious, and he was seeing Rin's thoughts. You see these dolphins pop up. And from what I can judge from the comments I got last week, I can assume that there was supposed to be a sex scene in this episode. Now, I'm not oblivious to knowing that Fate Stay Night is based off of a hentai visual novel. I know it is. And I know there's sex scenes in it. I know. I know about that already. And so, things I want to point out is, I'm guessing that this segment right here with the dolphin scene probably had some form of sex scene. Probably the way to communicate and link two mages together is probably through intercourse. I'm assuming that's the way to link two mages, judging by the comments I got last week. And if that is true, it's understandable why it got cut out. Really. Let's think about this, okay? This has to air on TV. They can't just straight up show a sex scene. They really can't. Now, I'm going to assume, judging by how Ufotable already announced on their Twitter and like their blog and everything like that, whatever sites they have, I know they already announced that they cut some footage from the season. They straight up cut a lot of footage from the season, and they will be adding it in to the Blu-rays. I already know, because I saw like the message about it. So, since they cut already scenes from this season of Unlimited Blade Works, it's possible, it's very possible that maybe, judging by how it was done in this episode, if the sex scene really is that important to the plot, they might add it in. They might. If it is that important to how mages link their mana. Because there was a transition in this episode that was very, awkward. It was, because in the dream with Shiro, when he sees, like, Ren's, thoughts or memories, he sees how Ren, is by herself when her father dies. You see Kirei in her dream. Oh my god, Kirei. That fucking demonic smile he gave as he opens, like, the blade up, and then you see he's at the Ren's father's grave. That's some fucked up shit, straight up. But, thing is, okay, we see Ren's memories, and through that, I'm assuming that if it is true, they'll probably add in that scene, if it is important. Because I know for a fact Karno Kyokai, it had a sex scene. Karno Kyokai, the movie, had a sex scene. And I don't know if that was in theaters with that scene, or if they added that in with the Blu-rays and DVDs. I have no idea. I have no idea if they played that sex scene in theaters. But I do know that Ufotable is not scared of adding those type of scenes. So it's possible they could add it if it really is important to the plot, the memories, and the linking of the mana. Now, also, it seems like, judging by the preview of next week's episode, like, yeah, I watched after the ending song, because the ending song's pretty kick-ass, by the way. I love the ending song. I watched the preview for next week's episode, and for what I can see, it seems like Assassin is around. I've been wondering about Assassin, because, as we know, Castor has disappeared. Castor, kind of fucking dead. And I've been wondering, like, did Castor just, let Assassin just die like that? Like, he just disappeared like that? I'm like, that's very anticlimactic after, the build-up of the first season. I remember that shit. I was waiting for the right moment to say it. But now I'm going to see how I heard Assassin's voice in the preview of next week's episode. I'm kind of happy about that. I'm really happy, because I want to see Assassin versus Saber. I really want to see that again, because as we saw, Sasaki Kojiro, he wanted a rematch. Straight up, he wanted a rematch. And we got to see the extent of his ability in, the first season. So I'm looking forward to seeing if Assassin really is still around. I'm not being trolled, and Saber's going to fight up against him. That would be kind of cool. But, I mean, why would Assassin fight, though? Like, I mean, you gotta think about this. Since his master is defeated, kind of, why would, no, never mind, I take that back. It's Sasaki Kojiro. From what I know of, from reading Vagabond already, it's just a swordsman. He's a swordsman. So, of course, if there's an honorable, strong person challenging him, of course he would want to challenge them back. So, never mind. That makes a lot of sense, actually, thinking about Sasaki wanting just to fight Saber just cuz, even without a master. It makes a lot of sense. But the bigger question is how did Sasaki Kojiro stick around? See, as we know, it's been longer than 2 days. Like, at least a day and a half, at the very least. Because Archer was reaching his limits when he was fighting Shiro. And so, how did Assassin stick around? Well, we know for a fact Castor's been dead before the fight of Emiya and Archer. So, if Assassin is around, how is he still around when he has no mana supply? Unless we go back to the first season. From what we found out is, servants can eat the souls. They can eat humans, pretty much, the souls of humans. I wonder if that's what Assassin is doing. But I don't know. Assassin's an honorable warrior. He is. It's Sasaki Kojiro, from what I've seen from Vagabond. So, I don't think he would do that. So, how is he still around? Unless Gilgamesh is supplying him with mana, which I highly doubt Gil would do that. I doubt Gil would do something like that. So, a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions right now about that, but we'll have to see how it goes next week. Overall, that's the episode. I mean, you have the ending with Shinji getting turned into a big blob thing. Like, his face is perfect. I think that's going to be probably part of thumbnail. It might be. I don't know. I might use the Ren and Emiya scenes, but that scene with Shinji, with his face in that big blob thing, yo, that's fucking funny. So anyways, you all have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.